What's going on, everybody? Mr. Octagonal here, and we are back with the 3 Minutes on the Clock podcast, Season 2, Episode number 18. As today, the NFL Draft is officially in the books. Very fun weekend. Obviously, with the pandemic, we had the virtual draft rather than, a draft actually in Las Vegas, but the NFL did a good job. They made the most of it, and as a draft nerd myself, it was a very exciting weekend. So today, we're going to be grading every single draft for the AFC. We're going to be looking at all 16 teams in this conference and really grade and evaluate how they did. And then later today, I will be uploading a video grading each NFC team's draft. So expect that within the next few hours. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. I've been doing draft grades for 5 years now, and every year I only give out one A+. I feel like there's always that one team that distinguishes themselves as the best draft above all the other teams. And usually I get my A+ on the nose. All 4 A+ in the past have, in hindsight, looked like quite good drafts. So going back 2016, the first year I did draft grades, my A+ went to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They drafted Jalen Ramsey, Myles Jack, Yannick Ngakoue. Looking at it with hindsight, talent-wise, that's an A+ class. Obviously, it hasn't really worked out with Jalen Ramsey gone, Yannick Ngakoue pretty much gone. So that draft hasn't worked out perfectly for Jacksonville, but talent-wise, it was outstanding. 2017, I gave my A+ to the New Orleans Saints. A lot of draft analysts did not like the Saints draft at the time. I did, and boy, was that a grand slam for me. The Saints that year drafted Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Alvin Kamara, Marcus Williams. That was an easy A+. That one I'm quite proud of. 2018, I gave my A+ to the Denver Broncos. They drafted Bradley Chubb, Courtland Sutton, Royce Freeman, signed Phillip Lindsay as an undrafted free agent. So I don't know if that was worthy of an A+, but that's definitely an A grade for sure, and I think that one was a hit as well. And then last year, another great draft. That was the Buffalo Bills, who I gave my A+ to. Ed Oliver, Cody Ford, Devin Singletary, Dawson Knox. All of those guys looked really promising as rookies. So as you can tell, whenever I give a team A+, it usually results in a pretty good draft. And this year, my A+ is going to the Baltimore Ravens. They absolutely crushed this draft. They let the draft board fall to them with their first-round pick, getting an absolute steal in Patrick Queen. He was number 16 on my board, the number 2 off-ball linebacker behind Isaiah Simmons. I don't even know if you can count Isaiah Simmons as an off-ball linebacker. So technically, Patrick Queen is the best one at his position. I had him graded higher than both Kenneth Murray and Jordan Brooks, who went ahead of him. So that was an easy A+ for me personally. We know Baltimore loves to had the foundation of their defense with their linebacking core. We've seen Ray Lewis become one of the best linebackers in the history of the NFL. Then they drafted C.J. Mosley high before he left. He looked very good. So now their new era of this defense can be led by Patrick Queen. So one of the best picks in the entire draft. And then after that, they still killed it. In round 2, they picked J.K. Dobbins, running back out of Ohio State. He was the 5th running back off the board, but he was the 2nd on my personal board, and he was almost first. He was 19 on my draft board. DeAndre Swift was 18. So J.K. Dobbins was very close to being the top running back in this class for me, and he went 5th. Easily the most well-rounded back in the class. He's going to be great as a rookie. And as if the Baltimore Ravens' elite, historic rushing offense could get any better, they got, in my opinion, the running back who will be the best right away in J.K. Dobbins. Then they traded back with their next second-rounder. They picked Justin Madubuike, interior defensive lineman out of Texas A&M. Not a player I was super high on, but in the 3rd round, that's not bad value. Getting a guy who has a lot of upside, can get after the quarterback. And then their next 2 third-rounders absolutely killed it again. Devin Duvernay, wide receiver out of Texas. He's going to be a perfect fit in the slot. Phenomenal pick for the Baltimore Ravens. And then Malik Harrison, linebacker out of Ohio State. Very athletic, productive player. And then Patrick Queen are going to be a really nice duo. So day 2, adding Dobbins, Madubuike, Duvernay, and Harrison. Great day 2 for Baltimore. And it did not get much worse. Day 3, again, they killed it. Ben Bredesen, Broderick Washington, 2 solid picks. Round 6, James Prochet, a wide receiver out of SMU. Not a dynamic athlete, but a guy who I think will have a high floor as a good depth receiver in this league. And then Geno Stone in the 7th, a really talented safety. Prochet and Stone should have been picked way earlier in day 3, probably 4th rounders for me. So really good day 3 for Baltimore. They absolutely killed this draft, and nobody this season drafted better than the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, last year, I gave the Bills an A+. I think that looks quite good in hindsight. Ed Oliver looks like he could be a superstar. Cody Ford was a quality starter. Devin Singletary's, Dawson Knox, they have big futures with this team. And this year, they had another great draft. Obviously, they gave up their first-round pick for Stephon Diggs. And after that, they did really well. Round 2, got great value in A.J. Epinesa, a guy who was in the mid-20s on my personal board. So getting him in the middle of the second round with, I think, pick 54 is outstanding value. And then with their third-round pick, they got Zach Moss, running back out of Utah. I really like that the Bills went out and drafted a running back because Devin Singletary is not a bell cow back. He's a good player. Really impressed me. That was a pick that I actually didn't like for the Bills last year. I gave them an A+, even with a player who I wasn't super high on in Devin Singletary. He proved me wrong. He was good last year, but he's not a bell cow back. So I think pairing him up with Zach Moss is going to be really, really good for this Buffalo Bills squad. And then day 3, they did an outstanding job. Gabe Davis, big-bodied red zone target, a player who I like. Jake Fromm in round 5. He'll be a phenomenal backup in this league. I think he's a perfect game manager. Not a guy who's ever going to be a great starter, but, a Chase Daniel-type player, a guy who's going to be a quality backup, and when your quarterback gets hurt or when you need a backup in, Jake Fromm is going to be a dependable guy. And then round 6, absolute steal, Isaiah Hodgins out of Oregon State. He was a top 75 player in this class for me. I loved him. Excellent hands. Some of the best hands of his entire draft. How he was available in the 6th round, I have no clue. Just an absolute steal for the Bills. And then Dane Jackson in the 7th round, not too bad. Tyler Bass in the 6th, talented kicker. So really, really good draft for the Buffalo Bills. For the second straight year, they killed it. Having the number 1 overall pick, it's hard to not do well, and the Cincinnati Bengals did very well. They're going to get an A grade. Obviously, Joe Burrow, the easy choice at 1. Not going to go into too much detail about it, just because that was the obvious choice. He was great last season for the Tigers, put up historic numbers, and now the Tiger King will stay with a Tiger mascot, returning home to Ohio, where he played his high school ball, I believe, where he started out in college at Ohio State. So really, really perfect pick for the Bengals. If they went any other route, I would have given it a bad grade. Day 2, B+, nothing great, but, a quality day 2. T. Higgins, Logan Wilson, 2 really solid players. They were picked a little bit high in comparison to where I had them on my draft board, but 2 really solid picks. T. Higgins is a big-bodied red zone threat who's going to be a huge piece to this receiving core. And then Logan Wilson. They need linebackers. Wilson's a guy who was great in college, so really nothing to complain about there. In the 4th round, what a steal. Akeem Davis-Gaver from Appalachian State. I had a higher grade on him than Logan Wilson. I think both of them are going to be a really nice linebacking pairing. Davis-Gaver was their best value pick in this entire draft. Khalid Kareem, Hakeem Adeniji, Marcus Bailey, the rest of the way. All 3 really solid picks. So what a draft for the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, they got their franchise quarterback, but even after Joe Burrow, they did an outstanding job. So the Bengals get a well-deserved A grade from me. I hate to be that guy who's just handing out consistent A's, but every team we've talked about deserves it. And the Cleveland Browns are no exception. They're going to get an A grade from me. Excellent draft for the Cleveland Browns. In round 1, they got Jedrick Wills, my top tackle in the class. They need offensive line bad. I don't think they could have made a better pick. I've had the top 4 tackles really in any order. I've been wishy-washy on who the top tackle is. At first, it was Andrew Thomas. Then it was Mekhi Becton. Then it was Tristan Wirfs for a while. And then right at the end, I changed my mind to Jedrick Wills. So really, you could put those top 4 tackles in any order. But for me right now, Jedrick Wills was my number 1 tackle. Best pass protector in the class. My only concern is how will he adjust to playing left tackle? Because he was on the right side at Alabama, but with Jack Conklin already there, Jedrick Wills is likely going to have to move over to left tackle. So that could be in a little bit of an adjustment, but I'm not too worried. I think he'll do just fine. Day 2, not bad, but not great either. They moved down a few spots to get Grant Delpit. I thought that was their best Day 2 pick. I had Antoine Winfield Jr. ranked ahead of him, and he went later at the same position. But I'm not really going to nitpick. Grant Delpit's still a really good selection. Then in the 3rd round, they got Jordan Elliott and Jacob Phillips. Elliott, I think, was fair value there in the late 3rd. I know Pro Football Focus really likes him. Good pass rusher, I think, can be a developmental piece in the middle of that defensive line. And then Jacob Phillips, a little bit of a reach for me. I didn't have him ranked in my top 150, but the Browns could use some linebacking help. And then day 3, holy smokes, did the Browns have, I think, the best draft yesterday. I don't think a single team did better during day 3. Starting with Harrison Bryant in the 4th round, tight end out of Florida Atlantic. I think that's fair value for him right at the beginning of the 4th round. Pretty high forward player. I think he'll be a solid number 2 tight end. I don't see David Njoku staying on this roster for too much longer. So I think Bryant and Austin Hooper will be a good duo. Round 5, Nick Harris, excellent value. I had a late 2nd round grade on him. Really like him out of Washington. I think he has the chance to really develop and then be the starting center once JT Treader leaves. And then round 6, maybe the steal of a draft, Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver out of Michigan. I've been thinking for the past couple months that there's a chance someone like him could slip into the late 1st round. Here he is in round 6, where the Browns pick him up. He was my 3rd ranked player, drafted on day 3, just behind Curtis Weaver and Bryce Hall. So this is an outstanding value pick for the Cleveland Browns. What a steal they're getting in Donovan Peoples-Jones. And I think he has the ceiling to be a really, really good wide receiver in this league. So phenomenal pick for the Cleveland Browns. They killed it on day 3. They're going to get an A grade. As I said, I hate to be the guy who keeps handing out A's, but another phenomenal draft, this time from the Denver Broncos. Round 1, Jerry Jeudy. He's my number 1 wide receiver in this class. I know a lot of people have it as CeeDee Lamb. I know some, like Mike Mayock and John Gruden, probably have it as Henry Ruggs. But for me, it's Jerry Jeudy, the best route runner in this class. Most polished receiver. He's a guy who's going to get anywhere between 1,000 and 1,200 yards this season alone as a rookie, to go along with a pretty high ceiling. Doesn't have the physical upside that either Ruggs or CeeDee Lamb have, but Jerry Jeudy's a phenomenal player, A-plus pick for the Denver Broncos, and then they're going to double down on receiver, KJ Hamler out of Penn State. So you got Cortland Sutton on one side, Jerry Jeudy on the other side, and then your wild card in the slot. In KJ Hamler, a speed threat, a guy who can also make plays on jet sweeps in the backfield, great with the ball in his hands. So that Broncos receiving core went from a one-man show into one of the better receiving cores in the NFL. Round 3, not great, and I think that's why they wouldn't get an A-plus over the Ravens. Michael Ojemudia, cornerback out of Iowa. I do like that pick. I do really like Ojemudia. Then center Lloyd Cushenberry at LSU. I'm not super high on Cushenberry. I know a lot of people thought that was really good value. I don't really 5th round grade on him. I don't think he's all that. I think he does have upside, but isn't that crazy. And then McTelvin Agim, defensive tackle from Arkansas. Not an awful pick, but another guy not inside my top 150. Then day 4, Albert O. I've been saying his name, Okwuegbunam. I think that when I was watching the draft yesterday, they said it a totally different way, and I don't remember how to say it. So we're just going to call him Albert O. A really athletic tight end with a high ceiling, kind of like Noah Fant. So this is a poor man's Noah Fant with medical concerns. That was one of the big issues with Albert O, and I think that's why he sort of slid a little bit. I don't really know about the fit here in Denver. The value is great, but since you already have that athletic receiving threat in Fant, I think more of a blocking tight end would have made sense here, but still value-wise, a really good pick. Justin Sternad, not bad. Round 6, Netane Muti, absolute steal, my number 1 guard in the entire draft class. The medical concerns are obviously there. He cannot stay on the field, but when he's on the field, he's great. And if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a starter on this team, and a really, really good starter at that. Tyree Cleveland, round 7. Derek Tuzga, round 7. Neither of those are bad picks. I think both of those guys are draftable players. So all around, really good draft for the Denver Broncos. They get an A grade. Now on to the Houston Texans. I give them a B-. They didn't have any great or any horrible selections. I have on this graphic that John Reed is their best pick, Charlie Heck is their worst pick. But neither of those are super great or super bad. And that goes for every Texans pick here in this draft. So I'm going to give them a B-. B- for day 2, B for day 3. Nothing for day 1 because they didn't have a first-round pick. Their first choice, Ross Blacklock, interior defensive lineman out of TCU. Talented player. He is my number 4 interior defensive lineman in this class. 3 or 4. I forget if I had Marlon Davidson ahead of him or not. I think Davidson was a little bit higher than him, but I could be wrong. And then Jonathan Grenard, edge rusher out of Florida. I like that they're addressing the front 7. Solid value picks. Neither of those guys are steals, but certainly not reaches either. Charlie Heck, tackle out of North Carolina. Not a bad pick by any means. I'm not super familiar with him. I'd like to do some more research on him, but I do think that is a little bit high. John Reed and then Isaiah Coulter were their last two picks, two guys who are really solid value selections. So all around, not a bad draft by any means for the Houston Texans, but I don't think it was a great draft either. So they're going to get a B-, which for me is pretty much average. Nothing to complain over, but nothing to really get fired up and excited about either. The Indianapolis Colts will be getting a B grade for me. Round 1, they didn't have any picks. They traded that for DeForest Buckner. Round 2 really did a nice job of addressing the offensive skill positions. Michael Pittman, wide receiver at USC. Big body, athletic, fast, height, weight, speed guy. I really like Michael Pittman. I think he's going to be a great player. And then Jonathan Taylor. I think this pick makes so much sense for the Indianapolis Colts. Marlon Mack, I don't think he's the long-term guy. He's on the final year of his contract. Nyheim Hines, he's a really good change of pace back. But I think a long-term bell cow back, at least for these next few years, and Jonathan Taylor is what this Colts team needs, and they're getting that in Taylor, who's been super productive at Wisconsin. I think he has the highest ceiling for any running back in this class. His mix of power, speed, athleticism, elusiveness, but he has a fumbling issue, and his body might be a little bit worn down because he's gotten more touches than a lot of the other top running backs in the class. But nonetheless, I think Jonathan Taylor has the chance to be special. Julian Blackmon, round 3. I think he was picked a little bit high. I don't think it's an awful pick, but I think I had, probably a mid to late 4th rounder on him, I want to say. Might be wrong about that. Then round 4, Jacob Eason, quarterback Washington. I think that pick makes sense. I'm not a huge Jacob Eason guy. I think that's about where he should have gone, middle of the 4th. I think he has a pretty high ceiling. He has some really good physical traits, and if the Colts can develop him, he could be a good player. Then after that, not a whole lot to really talk about. So their day 3 was very unexciting. All around, I'm going to give them a B draft. This, for me, is a little bit above average. Nothing crazy, but a quality draft from the Indianapolis Colts, and I think their offense should be pretty fun to watch next year. Every year, it really seems like I give the Jaguars a good grade in the draft. I think I've given them an A- or better every year since I've started these draft grades, and that streak will come to an end. But still a solid draft for Jacksonville. They're going to get a B. They had 2 first-round picks, going with C.J. Henderson and K'Lavon Hassan. I think both of those guys are going to be really solid players, very high-ceiling guys. C.J. Henderson made business decisions in coverage, and I think a little bit of that can be attributed likely to work ethic and attitude. And we've seen talented defensive players want out of Jacksonville because of their attitude. So if they don't get it together, I'm not saying C.J. Henderson will want out, but it's something to monitor, as he doesn't have any character concerns per se, but I think not always giving the most effort, business decisions on tackles, I think that could be a little bit character-esque, and maybe he's a guy who might have a short leash in Jacksonville, or he'll have a short leash for Jacksonville, I should say, because if this team doesn't turn it around, maybe he will want out. And then K'Lavon Hassan out of LSU, talented speed rusher, Brian Burns 2.0 for me. If you like what you saw from Brian Burns last year, which I personally did, then you're going to like what you're going to see from K'Lavon Hassan this year. I think him and Josh Allen will complement each other well. They're two very similar players, though. That's the thing. But I think both of them could be really good with this Jaguar defense. Round 2, Laviska Shenault, talented wide receiver, has some medical question marks. But with the ball in his hands, he's a playmaker. And I think him and DJ Chark could be a nice duo. Devon Hamilton, defensive tackle, Ohio State, talented player. So far, all 4 of these picks are the definition of B picks. Nothing crazy, but nothing bad either. Round 4, a selection I really like, Ben Bartch, offensive tackle out of St. John's. And this is not the St. John's team who developed guys like Chris Mullen, not the St. John's Big East team that we know from college basketball. This is a Division III school. St. John's in Minnesota. But I really like Ben Bartch. I think he's a super talented player, and I think he has the ceiling to be something really good. Then after that, not a very eventful day 3. Josiah Scott, Shaq Quarterman, not bad. Colin Johnson's an interesting name in there. I know he's gotten some NFL buzz in the past. I don't think he's all that good, though. He has size. That's about it. He doesn't really provide a whole lot else for me. Jake Luton, quarterback. Could be an interesting backup. So all around, not a bad draft for Jacksonville, but nothing crazy good either. Next up, we got the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to get a B as well. No crazy good picks, but no crazy bad picks either. Round 1, they picked up Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back out of LSU. And for me, that is a luxury pick, but when you're in a position where the Kansas City Chiefs are coming off a Super Bowl championship, you can't really complain about a luxury pick. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is really underrated and has the chance to be very good. I think he fits quite well into the Kansas City Chiefs offense, and he'll probably be the main back this season, so really solid pick there. Rounds 2 and 3, 2 quality picks in Willie Gay and Lucas Niang. Niang has some medical question marks, but he's really talented. Willie Gay has some off-the-field question marks. I'm not too worried about those personally. I think most of it was just like him cheating on a test. That doesn't affect your NFL career, so I think both of those picks are really good. And then day 3, they didn't really do anything exciting. No one who really pops out at me, but I don't think this team really had a bad pick either. So all around, quality draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. Nothing crazy good, but I think they're still going to be a really good team next season, and I think some of these rookies will make big impacts, especially Clyde and Willie Gay, and then eventually Lucas Niang will develop, and I think he'll be a starting tackle for this Chiefs squad. The Los Angeles Chargers will be getting a B grade as well. Obviously, they picked up Justin Herbert in the first round, a player who I'm not huge on, but I think he has the physical tools to be really, really good. So I think the Chargers should not rush him. I don't think he should really start this season. But next year, 2021, is when I think they should put him in, see what he's made of. I think he has the chance to be really good. They traded into the late first round for Kenneth Murray, a player who I do like, very high character, high leader, that's not a thing. But high character, leadership, that's what you're getting with Kenneth Murray, well-rounded player. They gave up both their second and third rounders to get him. Not an awful trade, would have liked to have seen them maybe give up a little less, but Kenneth Murray's a good player. Day 2, obviously, they didn't pick anyone, and then day 3, I think they did quite well. Joshua Kelly in round 4, not a bad pick. I have him listed as their worst pick because I thought they were better running backs on the board, but that's not a bad choice per se. Joe Reed in round 5, really good value. Alohi Gilman in round 6, really good value. Both of those guys are top 150 players for me. And then KJ Hill, top 100 player for me in the 7th. I think he has a very high floor, and he'll make an impact as a number 3 or 4 receiver. Plug him into the slot, and I think he'll be really, really good. So, solid draft for the Chargers. They killed it on day 3, and even though I'm not sold on Justin Herbert, I think the Chargers fans have a lot to get excited. All 12 Chargers fans should be pretty pumped up about their future. The Las Vegas Raiders are going to get a B- grade from me. Of course, their first pick, they got the speedster Henry Ruggs out of Alabama. He's my wide receiver 3 in this class, but I don't think it was a bad pick. Fits what this Raiders offense needs, a vertical dynamic threat. I know Al Davis in his grave was having a dance party down there. And I think Henry Ruggs has the chance to be really, really good. So I'm not going to fault them for picking him over Judy or Lamb. Pick 19, Damon Arnett, a little bit of a reach. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that statement, but he's a Mike Mayock guy, tough physical corner, so I think he fits this team too. Round 3, Lynn Bowden. I think he's Taysom Hill 2.0, a guy who can play quarterback, play receiver, play running back. I think he's a more athletic version of Taysom Hill. Brian Edwards, raw receiver. I don't think he'll be great right off the bat, but has upside. And then Tanner Muse, a flex safety linebacker guy. So decent day 2, not bad, not great either. Same can be said about day 1. And then day 3, only 2 picks. They added John Simpson, guard from Clemson, and then Amik Robertson. I think their best value pick. He's a really talented nickel corner. Excellent value in the 4th round for Las Vegas. So no awful picks. I think Damon Arnett was a reach, but nothing to really get absolutely fired up about. I think Henry Ruggs should definitely excite this fan base. So if I was a Raiders fan, I'd probably be pretty fired up about him. But not a bad draft from the Raiders. I know a lot of people are probably going to give this a lower grade than a B-. But I think this is a fair evaluation of how they did. Not phenomenal value for the most part for a lot of these picks, but not awful value either. So not a great draft, but not an awful one for the Raiders. The Miami Dolphins had a very interesting draft for me. You know, a few days ago, before the draft, I was worried for their sake that they were going to move up to 3, pick Tua, then at 18, find a reach like Josh Jones, not have as many picks after that, and I'd have to give them a low grade. Well, that's not what happened at all. They stayed at 5, they got Tua. I'm obviously not a huge Tua Tagovailoa guy, but for pick 5, not awful. He was my number 2 quarterback in the class behind Joe Burrow. It was close between Tua and Herbert. Both of them I'm a little bit lower on than the consensus. But I think Tua is super talented. I don't think he's a blue chip prospect even without the injuries, but I still think he's a really talented player. The injuries obviously are a concern, and it's not really just the hip, it's the durability. He's gotten injured quite often at Alabama, and getting hit harder by stronger football players, I'm a little bit worried for his sake. But talent-wise, he's really talented, so I think he has the chance to be something special. Austin Jackson at 18, I do think he is a little bit of a reach. Super raw, but a common theme here by the Dolphins was really drafting for 2021. I don't think Tua is going to play this year because of his injury. For Austin Jackson, I don't think he's going to make a huge impact right away. I think he has a lot of upside, but was picked a little bit high. No Igbenogany at pick 30. I love Igbenogany, but he's another guy who's raw, likely to make a bigger impact in 2021 for me. I think he'll be this team's nickel corner. One of my favorite players in the entire class, a converted wide receiver to corner, mainly because he can't catch, but he has good ball skills. He knows how to track the ball. He just can't catch. Really good cover corner, and I think that he was probably, or without a doubt, their best value pick in round 1, and I was expecting him to be their best pick for me until Curtis Weaver happened. So I was expecting Noah Igbenogany to be someone's best pick, but because of Curtis Weaver slipping, Igbenogany does not get that. We'll talk about Curtis Weaver in a second, but on to round 2, Robert Hunt. I think that's a nice pick. He'll be a plug-and-play starter right away, so I think that's a good choice for the Dolphins. Raekwon Davis, interior defensive lineman from Alabama, a little bit high for me, but he is still pretty solid, and I think he could be pretty good. Brandon Jones, safety out of Texas, that was a pretty big reach for me. I think he fits this defense pretty well, but he was the first player drafted not in my top 150, and I think he was just picked a little bit too high. Day 3, Solomon Kinley, Jason Strobridge, good picks. Curtis Weaver, steal of the draft. I don't think anyone got a better value pick at all in this entire draft than Curtis Weaver in the 5th round. I had him as a top 32 player in the class. He was number 30 on my big board. He was another player like Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I thought had a chance to slip into the 1st round. And here he is now getting picked in round 5. I don't think Curtis Weaver is ever going to be a superstar, but he has a super high floor. He's a guy who I think in his prime is going to be a 7 to 8 sack guy per season. So I think this is a phenomenal selection for Miami Dolphins, getting a guy who I think will be a really, really good piece early on. And then the rest of their draft, Blake Ferguson, launch snapper. I'm not super familiar with their launch snapper situation, but if you need one, I suppose go ahead and get one. And then Malcolm Perry, quarterback, running back, wide receiver out of Navy. He's the worst version for me of Lynn Bowden. So really, these teams trying to get more wild card Taysom Hill-like players, I think that's a good flyer in the 7th round. And the Dolphins, even though they took some reaches early, I think 5 is a little bit too high for Tua regardless. I think 18 is too high for Austin Jackson. They made up for it with some really good value picks, getting guys like Igbenogany, Curtis Weaver, and a few other really talented players. So I'm going to give the Miami Dolphins a B. I think a B might honestly be a little bit harsh, but I think this is a pretty fair evaluation of how they did. The New England Patriots are going to get a C+ for me. It was a very weird draft for New England. Knowing Bill Belichick, he'll turn this into an A+. So I'm curious to see how this draft really looks in 5 years from now. So day 1, they traded out of your first rounder, got a 2nd and a 3rd from the Chargers. I thought that was pretty good value. And then with that 2nd round pick, they got Kyle Duggar, the safety out of Lennar Ryan. I thought that was a bit high, considering the other safeties on the board. Grant Delpit, Antoine Winfield Jr., Jeremy Chin. I had all 3 of those guys ranked ahead of him. But I do like Kyle Duggar, and I think he'll be a really, really good piece. The Patriots love to have multiple good safeties. Deron Harmon is gone. Devin McCourty and Patrick Chung are really starting to get older. So I think they're really going to go young at the safety position these next few seasons. I think they made a nice choice here in Duggar, a guy who has a really high ceiling, very athletic. Lots of production for a Division II school in Lennar Ryan. Then they used that 3rd round pick from the Chargers to move up and get Josh Uche, their best pick in this draft, in my opinion. I think Uche obviously is a great fit for this defense, a hybrid player, an edge rusher who's not going to have his hand in the dirt. You can have him go out in coverage. You can have him go after the quarterback. So I think this is a great pick for them. He's going to be their next like Dante Hightower, Jamie Collins type player. So I think this is a really good pick for them. Round 3 was a little bit questionable, though. I think they did great in round 2 with Doug Aranuche. Round 3 not as great. Anthony Jennings, another hybrid edge rusher. I thought that was a solid pick. But then they traded up twice to get multiple tight ends, Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene. I don't think either of those picks were great. I think Asiasi is solid. I think he has a lot of that athletic upside. And they do need 2 tight ends to be specific, but I thought there were better ones on the board. Albert O, Bryson Hopkins, Adam Troutman, and even some undrafted players like Hunter Bryant. I think I had Thaddeus Moss ranked higher than Keene. I didn't have Moss ranked higher than Asiasi. So I think Asiasi wasn't a bad pick. I thought Dalton Keene, though, was a pretty big reach. And then day 3, really nothing that stands out to me. Not a whole lot of great value picks for me. But obviously, since this is the New England Patriots, they'll turn 3 of these day 3 guys into Pro Bowlers. So C+ for now, but if you're a Patriots fan, you just got to keep hope. The first 5 drafts in this episode, all of those teams got A's, and then we haven't seen an A since. Well, that's going to change. The New York Jets will be getting an A-. I thought they did a really, really solid job. Round 1, Mekhi Becton, offensive tackle out of Louisville. I think he's a really good player. Has the highest ceiling for any offensive tackle in this draft class. I like that the Jets went with alignment over wide receiver, even though guys like Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, they're great. But I like that they addressed the line first. Mekhi Becton, really, really good player. I think he has the chance to be something special. Round 2, they traded down and got Denzel Mims. So not only did they get excellent value, but they moved down in the process. Denzel Mims slipped for whatever reason. I thought in college he was really good. I had a late second round grade on him before the Senior Bowl, when a lot of people had him as like a 4th, 5th round guy. Then the Senior Bowl, he did really well. He rose for everybody. Then the Combine, he rose. And then he became a late 1st, early 2nd round guy for me and most others. Somehow slipped here to the late 2nd. The Jets had to capitalize on that value. Really, really good pick getting Denzel Mims. Round 3, they added Ashton Davis, the safety out of Cal. I'm not as high on Davis as others, but I think round 3, this isn't a reach. He was the best safety on the board for me. And then Jabari Zuniga, talented edge rusher out of Florida. I don't think this will be Ja'Kai Polite 2.0. I mean, there's a chance the two guys are similar, but Ja'Kai Polite didn't really have a great work ethic, didn't really want to be a very good football player, so that's why he got cut so early. I think Jabari Zuniga, chances are, will be better than Ja'Kai Polite. Added another Gator in LaMichael Pirine in round 4. Drafted a quarterback as well, James Morgan. I like that they went quarterback. I would have picked Jake Fromm over him, but Sam Darnold's had some injury stuff in the past. He's not played a full 16 games yet, so it's good to get a backup. And then really good value in round 5, Bryce Hall, cornerback out of Virginia. He was my number 2 ranked player who was drafted in day 3 behind Curtis Weaver. Phenomenal value for the Jets. Obviously, he had an injury last year with Virginia, but even so, he's been really good in the past. I don't think the injury is really career-threatening, so phenomenal value. And then adding a punter, Braden Mann, out of Texas A&M. Really, really good pick there. So all around, excellent draft for the New York Jets. They're going to get an A-. The Pittsburgh Steelers had a very average draft for me. No really good picks, no really bad picks either. They got Chase Claypool in the 2nd. I think that could be a good pick. My only problem with it is that they've drafted receiver on day 2 the past 4 years now. Juju, James Washington, and Deontay Johnson. And all 3 of those guys are quite good. Juju's going to have to get paid soon. Maybe they don't want to pay Juju. James Washington, I think, is the weakest link of those 3, but he's still solid. Deontay Johnson looked really promising last season. So I think they could have really done something other than wide receiver, but not a bad pick here in Chase Claypool. Wide receiver, tight end hybrid. You can have him as an Evan Engram-like guy. For a tight end situation is not great. Eric Ebron's a one-year wonder. He ain't it. As a Lions fan, trust me, I know. Vance McDonald, not bad. But I think having an athletic wide receiver, tight end hybrid, and Claypool could be really good. And then Alex Highsmith, another B pick in the 3rd round. Good player. I've been high on him for a while. I think late 3rd is about where his value stands. Round 4, Anthony McFarland out of Maryland. I think he fits this team really well. You got your power back in James Conner. You added Benny Snell last year. So why not add the speed threat in Anthony McFarland, a guy who can really make big plays easily, so I really like that pick for them. Antoine Brooks, their best value pick for me in the 6th round. I had a top 150 grade on him. I think I had a 4th round grade on him. So overall, pretty good draft for the Steelers. No really bad picks, no really good picks either, and they're going to get a B because of it. And the final team in today's episode, the Tennessee Titans, they're going to get a B+. I think they did quite well. Round 1, Isaiah Wilson, offensive tackle out of Georgia. He's very raw, can also play guard. I think he won't make a huge impact year 1, but I think he can learn from some of the veterans on this offensive line, like Taylor Lewan, Roger Saffold, Dennis Kelly. I think it was a little bit high for him, but he was my top-graded offensive lineman on the board, so can't really complain. Round 2, one of the biggest steals in this draft, Christian Fulton, cornerback, LSU. How he was on the board, it beats me. I almost had him as a borderline elite prospect. Number 15 player in the class, number 1 player who was not a first-rounder, so really good value for the Tennessee Titans. In my final mock draft, I had them getting him at 29, coincidentally. Darrington Evans in the 3rd, really fun running back. I think he'll be a really nice piece, good Deion Lewis replacement. And then day 3, Labrell Murchison, Cole McDonald, solid picks late. Chris Jackson, safety out of Marshall, I'm not super familiar with him, but all around, really good draft for the Tennessee Titans. They're going to get a B+. So that's how the video's going to end. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember, NFC draft grades will be out later today as well, so make sure to stay on the lookout for that. Have a good one. Peace.